את עצמי למיוט שאני לא אפריע לך.
אוקיי. ואנחנו עושים sharing, נכון? אוקיי. So, good very afternoon to you students. My name is Ofer Caspi and I'm a physician. I'm the head of Integrative Oncology at the Davidov Cancer Center at Rabin Medical Center here in Israel. And today I will be delighted to speak with you about Integrative Oncology. I would like to give you some guidelines and some principles and to give you an evidence-based review as we stand at the year of 2020. Believe it or not, but once upon a time, we used to treat patients with asthma with cigarettes. And you can see that from the New England Journal of Medicine review series, that would be on the left side. And of course, nowadays, no one would even think about something like that. So we have moved far away from this model to something else. And the something else is represented on the right side, and that is the BMJ integrated care. And this is really what I would like to focus on today. Some of you may wonder how we come to speak on integrative medicine or complementary alternative medicine in a course in oncology. But the truth of it is that science truly benefits from diversity. And that idea of diversity is represented in many different ways. You can see on this screen, on that slide, you can see that in the very mainstream platforms of conventional medicine, alternative medicine is represented. And if you go even further and you go to the authorities of conventional medicine, at the NIH, there is a National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. There is at the National Cancer Institute, the NCI, there is an office of complementary and alternative medicine. And as you can see, they have also PDQs and other things that you are used to from drugs and medicine. Same things applies to alternative medicine. So the idea behind the talk today is not to give you something that doesn't exist. To the contrary, here you can see a number of textbooks and as well as a Society of Integrative Oncology that you can see here. There is a journal, there are books, etc. So it is within the mainstream of cancer care, not what oncologists do, but that's really not what they are supposed to do. In medicine, we truly make progress, and the progress that we make is step by step. And you can see that from the editorial from the ASCO and the Journal of Clinical Oncology. We're really 1 year to the next. It's really incremental. There are very rare breakthroughs. So immunotherapy will be a breakthrough, but other than that, you know, most of what we do with cancer today, with precision medicine and patient-centered care, etc., is truly through small increments. And integrative medicine, as I will show you today, does bring to the table the potential of contribution to patient health and to how to cope with cancer or prevent even better cancer. So I want to give you kind of where we stand. If we spoke about incremental values and we spoke about the progress that we make. The Nobel Prize in 2015 was given, believe it or not, to a Chinese medicine herb. So artemisia and artemisinin, which are now part of what we conventional mainstream evidence-based anti-malaria medicine, was given to a Chinese scholar, Professor Yao, Tu Yao. And she was given the Nobel Prize, not because of she was practicing alternative medicine or conventional medicine, but because she insisted to prepare the herb as a drug in the old traditional way. And it's a fascinating story that we don't have much time to go into, but I would encourage you to go into Google and just click it and Google it up and see the story behind the discovery. So the idea of what we're talking nowadays in medicine, as you can see on the cover of the Time magazine, is about dream teams. You can see that on the lower right side of the cover. This dream team really is what we would like to accomplish and to achieve at comprehensive cancer centers. And yet, the reality of which is that despite the fact that about 80% of your cancer patients will use in some point or another some alternative medicine, would it be herbs or supplements or vitamins or yoga and Tai Chi or mind-body techniques or shiatsu, reflexology, acupuncture, what have you, 80% of them will use it, some 3/4. And yet the reality of it is that they will use it in parallel and not integrated with the conventional treatment. Now that's a pity. And the reason why that is a pity is because it very much resembles our library. Remember, our medical library is composed of textbooks. Very same way as a zoo, you know, where the giraffe doesn't have any understanding, to the best of our knowledge, that the zebra lives just to the right or the monkey to the left. So very much like our library and the zoo, we believe that there are contents that are separated one from each other. But the truth of it is that patients nowadays bring us a chapter from one textbook, a paragraph from another textbook, a full, you know, volume of a third textbook, etc. And we have to integrate it all. So rather than practicing one next to the other, we have to practice one with the other. This is also based on ethical principles. And as you can see here, our call for pluralism in medicine, our call for respecting the patient's values, belief system, culture, tradition, etc., does play a role when you think about integrative oncology. And you have to be reminded that evidence, as you can see here from the BMJ, does not make decisions. People do. So if we know that the person is the one who makes the decisions and we are advisors, we guide them what to do and how to do, we have to understand where they come from. And yet there is a knowledge gap. And the knowledge gap is not because there is an expectation from a physician to know it all. No, we practice medicine in orchestras. So there are different instrument players, and one is playing the guitar, the other one the piano, the third the trumpet, and we all have to play together so the music is harmonious. But the knowledge gap is not about the notes. The knowledge gap is not about the specifics. The knowledge gap is truly about the appreciation that integrative medicine, complementary and alternative medicine, as I will show you, does have a role in the orchestra, does have a role in the concert and in the music, because the alternative is much worse. For example, there is evidence that if patients are looking for information at the web, they may be misled. And as you can see, the information on the web for integrative kind of stuff, for alternative and complementary type of stuff, is really not to be trusted. There are many reasons for that, as you can guess. It's not hard to guess. So we have to develop another resource that is reliable for them. If they look on the internet, or if they are not guided by us, the professionals, they may choose to use alternative medicine as alternative to medicine. And as you can see from this review at the Annals of Surgical Oncology, you can see that patients who have really tried first alternative medicine and therefore have delayed their conventional treatment, it came with a cost, with a price. and their prognosis was much worse than patients who used them both upfront in a very smart or wise way. So for those reasons, we have to think about alternative medicine in the context of oncology in a different way. And the way I like to look at it is through Venn diagrams. And in fact, you have three circles here. One is about curing the patient, curing the disease. And this is really what conventional medicine is about. But the two others that are closely related and shared domains are caring for the patient and the issue of quality of life or end of life care. And as you can see, there is really there are many teams here, experts that can help the patients, the physicians and the nurses on the one hand from the conventional medicine, but also supportive care that really compose nowadays a supportive core that includes palliative medicine, psycho-oncology, nutrition, physiotherapy, and also complementary and integrative medicine. So as you can see, when the patient comes in, we have to look at the patient from different perspectives and decide for ourselves with the patient in a shared information, shared decision-making process. We have to decide who should be involved and when and for what purposes. If you claim to own the patient and not to share the responsibility with other professionals, the patient may fare worse. So it is with your incentive to know who else around you can help with the patient. And therefore, I like to make things clear and simple. The purpose or the goal or the task of integrative medicine in oncology is not to cure cancer. Alternative medicine does not cure cancer. Alternative medicine can help in the way so we can combine the efforts so the patient can fare better. And there are three main tasks for integrative medicine. First is to help the patient with symptom management and quality of life. As you know, treatments, cancer treatments, anti-cancer treatments are not only efficacious to an extent, but also toxic to an extent. So many patients would suffer symptoms and many symptoms to diverse degrees of severity, both from the disease as a result of the occurrence of cancer, but also from the treatment. So the first task of integrative medicine in oncology is to help the patient with symptom management and quality of life. Another task is to facilitate smart consumerisms. What, when, and how to integrate. It's not enough to know that curcumin, for example, or any other herb or supplement or something like that might be beneficial for cancer. It is extremely important to tailor it to the patient. In some instances, it's okay to take supplements. In other instances, it's just a big no-no. There might be an interaction there, and I'll speak about safety shortly. So a second task or challenge for integrative medicine in oncology is to facilitate smart consumerisms. And the third one is one that you should really bear in mind. For many of you, this was a common sense when you entered medical school. And as you leave medical school soon and you go into your residencies and fellowships, and when you practice medicine, please never forget that the body has an innate wisdom to heal. No physician in the world, including myself, know how to heal a wound, but the body does that. So this is the art of medicine. How do you recruit the body and mind, innate wisdom to heal? And I'll give you some examples for that. So three main tasks, as you can see, neither one of them is to cure cancer. It's to support the treatment to cure cancer. And therefore, please remember that treatment delays are associated with a price in breast cancer, in head and neck cancer, etc. So bottom line, integrative medicine is not about being an alternative to medicine when effective treatment exists. If you have a stage 4 patient, cancer patient, who doesn't have any more options on the conventional table, or to the very contrary, you have a patient with, say, stage 0 CLL or a smoldering myeloma or something like that, where the toxicity of conventional treatments exceeds, the benefits. In both cases, you may consider complementary medicine as a first line, but never do that when you have an effective treatment to cure the patient. With that said, I would like to remind you that despite the fact that we speak about cancer and cancer cells, we really talk about an ecosystem. And this is the tumor microenvironment. And the ecosystem is never about one cell or one tissue or one organ or one system. It's about the whole. It's about the organism. And because of that, things that may seem not related or unrelated to the cancer care really play a role when we talk about treating the old patients. For example, obesity. We now know through this mechanism that is outlined on this slide, we now know that how obesity increases the risk for cancer. And therefore, if you do not address the metabolic profile of the patient, even after the patient has been diagnosed, we may miss opportunity here to intervene with cancer biology. So a second idea that I would like to install in your mind is that we're talking about ecosystems here. We're talking about whole systems. Let me show you that. This is another slide. And again, these slides do not come from an alternative medicine journal, This is from Nature, and you will see shortly a slide from Cell and Science, etc. And you see how the biobehavioral factors do affect the tumor biology. So the pathways and the mechanism that we're talking about here are not just that the patient is satisfied and relaxed and happy and things like that. It's not about that. It really is about how we can understand why the cancer cell behaves the way it does, how the tumor microenvironment affects the cancer cell, what is the bidirectional communication between them and with the host, the organism. So you can see here from Cell that we talk much about the immunity, the inflammation in cancer, not just in the era of immunotherapy, but also because when we look at these things and we understand that chronic inflammation is closely related to what we eat, to nutrition, to lack of physical activity, to exposure to toxins, to smoking, to other things, then really when you look again in a Venn diagram profile, you can see the different types of inflammation affects tumorigenesis. So if we can intervene in each and every one of them, both from a conventional standpoint and from alternative medicine standpoint, then we have the opportunity to address the whole patient and to treat the cancer. So that idea that I am presenting to you echoes in the mainstream journals. The idea here from the JAMA of evolving from reductionism to holism, that systems medicine, not the library with a textbook next to another textbook, next to another textbook, not the zoo with animals separated in different cages, but rather developing an ecosystem where the whole is more than the sum of its parts, is really what we and you who will be practicing in the 21st century is really have to look at the integrated delivery system, how we can do that integrated together. So there are guidelines. We don't have to invent the wheels. And as you can see here from the Society of Integrative Oncology, here are guidelines on how to implement that and how to combine complementary therapies, including botanicals and in integrating dietary supplements, etc., etc. So I would like to encourage you, even if you do not practice integrative something, or even if you have no interest whatsoever in the world of complementary alternative medicine, that's okay. Yet there might be people around you who master that body of knowledge. Some people around you who know how to integrate, what to do, and more important, what not to do and when to do. The idea behind those guidelines come from research, and that's again from Nature Medicine. And there is often the claim that we have only one medicine, the one medicine that is evidence-based. We don't have conventional or unconventional, it's only the one medicine that is evidence-based. Well, the truth of the matter is that there is awful lot of research that goes on in the realm of complementary and alternative medicine. And we not only now understand whether things work or do not work, but we also understand some of the mechanisms for how they work. So we now know the mechanisms by which we can help, for example, neutropenic patients, help them so they have mature neutrophils, so they go through the phase of neutropenia in short terms rather than long ones, and do not expose themselves to infections. This is again not instead of GCSF type medicine, you know, drugs and injections and things like that, but we truly understand what is behind the black box, what's inside the black box. It's not just enough to say, oh, take vitamins, you know. We understand how vitamins might work or might not work. You know, another example would be antioxidants. Antioxidants may interfere with some chemotherapy and radiotherapy, etc. So if they might be considered safe in a different context, you know, within the context of cancer, you know, we have to be really careful. You have to be reminded, or if you do not know that yet, please know that since the 1994, the DSHEA Act that passed through Congress, the dietary ingredients used in dietary supplements are no longer subject to the pre-market safety evaluations of the FDA. And you have to remember that and understand that. Why? Because one, the quality assurance is not the one that you're used to with drugs and medicine and other, you know, medical techniques and medical equipment. And the other thing is because there is awful lot of cheating going around, and the possibility that patient may receive something that is different from what is written on the label of the bottle of box is unfortunately high. So for that reason, one useful matrix that I find is one that is 2x2, where on the x-axis you have efficacy and on the y-axis you have safety. And in so doing, you can divide this matrix, this table, into 4 quadrants, where you have things that are both efficacious and safe, or you have things that are both non-efficacious and not safe, and of course the combination. So if you look around this table, you can understand that if we map an intervention in oncology or pediatrics or gynecology or neurology, what have you, if we map the potential complementary intervention into one of these four quadrants, it gives us kind of a safety net, whether to proceed or to consider that or to avoid it all along. So we would not want to use anything that has serious risk or it's not efficacious. And on the other hand, we might want to consider favorably things that have evidence that supports both safety and efficacy. So again, the say that because something is natural, therefore it's safe, should never be the rule. You should never assume that something, because of it's safe, it's also because it's natural, it is safe and efficacious. And I'll give you some examples for that. For example, aloe vera is a very important herb. We can prepare many things from aloe, but aloe, for example, can cause hypokalemia, and here is another example where you can see here torsade de pois, and torsade de pois here was because patient was given cesium chloride. And why was a patient given cesium chloride here? You can see that's from the New England Journal of Medicine. Well, it was sold on the web as an anti-cancer cure. And you can see what happened to the patient. So never assume that because something is natural, it is safe or effective. It is not. There are a number of reviews that can help you with that. I will just present to you two here where you can see expert opinion. You can see now here a list of things that you might or might not recognize, and you can see how the review tries to look at it, and to assess the safety of that. And also the Journal of Clinical Oncology, herbal remedies in the US, the potential adverse interaction with anti-cancer drugs. So if you want to say bluntly to a patient, I don't understand, and therefore I do not want you to use any supplements or herbs or vitamins or things like that, that's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is to refer the patient to an integrative center or an integrative physician or someone who really understands and masters that literature, that body of knowledge. And as you can see here, there is awful lot of it. In particular, I want to call your attention to the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer website. They have on their website, they have a list or a compendium of herbs and supplements, and it's beautifully, it's by the ABC, as you can see, and you can go there and click up aloe or ginkgo or ginseng or curcumin or anything that you would like, and you will get a monograph on it. So there are textbooks on that issue. You can go on the PubMed. There is a natural medicine database that looks at the interactions. In UpToDate, you can see that. In Micromedics, you can see that. So we know a lot about drug herb interactions, not in terms just of how they interfere with each other, but also they may actually augment each other, or they may affect the lab tests of your patients, etc. So bottom line, there is a body of knowledge, and we now can check online for interactions. The textbooks, such as old textbooks, etc., should really be only the basis. You cannot rely upon, because they are updated every now and then, every number of years when there is a new edition coming out. So electronic databases would be the best way to go. And you can see that even with the most innocent type of things, for example, in this case, garlic, it does have interactions with other stuff. You can see that with ginkgo, it's an herb that is often used for neurological things, and you can see how it affects some other medicine. You can see that with ginseng, which is an adaptogen, it's something to strengthen you, okay? And you can see that it interacts with some other medicine. So after we emphasize the importance of the integration and the ecosystem and safety, because safety comes first, you know, first do not harm, let's look at some other possibilities here, for example, in the realm of mind-body medicine. And this study was conducted in New York and was published at the Journal of National Cancer Institute in 2009, I believe. And in this study, they took about 200 breast cancer patients and they divided them up into two groups. One received 15 minutes of relaxation or hypnosis at the entrance to the OR, a kind of a part of the sedation, of the pre-sedation before the surgery took place. And the other group was what we call in psychology attention control group. And so here you can see that they took these 200 patients, divided them up, and the results were astonishing. Not only did patients fare better in terms of satisfaction, less pain, less nausea, shorter stay at the hospital, but also the surgery itself was shorter. Now, in terms of institutional costs, as you can see, there was quite a significant amount of savings. So this was not only safe and efficacious, it was also cost saving. It was so much cost saving that David Spiegel, who is a psychiatrist in Stanford, who wrote the editorial, said, if a drug were to do that, everyone would by now be using it. If we have had a drug that within 15 minutes, no side effects whatsoever, reduces suffering and reduces cost without compromising the outcome of the patients, we would love to use that, correct? So why don't we? Why don't we use that? We don't use that because we're not used to think along those lines, you know, when we treat the patients. But the truth of the matter is that mind matters in cancer survival. And it has been shown time and again that the perioperative period is especially one that is vulnerable, where the immune systems doesn't work well. And this is the period where there is an increased risk because of the immune suppression, because of the stress of the surgery, for metastasis, for micrometastasis. So this is not to say, again, and this comes from the JAMA, this is not to say that you should not operate on cancer patients. Yes, surgery is an important, sometimes the most important therapy that the patient, the cancer patient may have. But it does suggest that we can do some things around that period that may help the patient, not just to feel better, but to fare better. And here's an example that comes from Harvard, from Herb Benson in his group, where you really, through relaxation response, change the epigenetics, where you really affect the presentation of pro-inflammatory and oncogenic genes, you know, so that within a short period of time, you know, at times weeks, you don't have to practice meditation or do things like that for years before you see the effects. It does come within weeks of practicing. So an opportunity, you know, from the move from reductionism to whole systems to the whole patient is to empower the patient and to help the patient participate in the healing process and the cure for the cancer, for example, by using some mind-body techniques. So mind-body techniques, may come to you as something that it's okay. Well, if the patient wants to do it, why not? But again, the idea of using Chinese medicine, for example, and Chinese medicinal herbs, for example, is one that may seem to you odd. At the end of the day, we're in the 21st century. Why would we want to use something that is old and traditional, etc.? Well, there are Cochrane reviews on those things. So there is a summary of evidence that you can look at that can help you understand through randomized controlled trials. Here, for example, a Chinese formula to increase white blood cell count in a patient who go through chemotherapy, to use to mitigate the side effects of colorectal cancer patients who go through chemotherapy and experience diarrhea, but also, again, to emphasize the safety of things, what to avoid. For example, Laetrile, or sometimes it's called amygdalin or B17, etc., which is pretty much what is inside, the apricot core, and it's basically cyanide. And so it has been promoted by alternative practitioners as anti-cancer treatment. Well, it is not. There is no reliable evidence for this, and it's in fact may be dangerous. How about acupuncture? So there is often a lot of research on acupuncture that goes into the mainstream. Mainly, acupuncture is being used in cancer for things such as pain, and especially CIPN, the chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy, for nausea and vomiting, for xerostomia, the dry mouth as a result of radiation in head and neck cancer, for hot flashes. Many breast cancer patients who receive hormonal therapy do experience hot flashes, both with aromatase inhibitors and with some other drugs. And so there is research that actually compares and head-to-head acupuncture with, for example, medicines such as venlafaxine and others, and really shows not only the non-inferiority of acupuncture, but the superiority in terms of side effects, etc. So there is no surprise that there are reviews on that, and there are guidelines on that, and position papers by experts that suggest that these treatments might be legitimate for cancer patients. Movement therapy is another place where we help patients. Once again, you may say, well, yoga, okay, why not? So you have to practice yoga carefully in with cancer patients, both because some patients may have bone metastases, but also because the patient may not be well fit to practice yoga. So we in our department do have yoga classes, Qigong, Tai Chi. I'll show you that shortly. And we tailor that to the level of effort that the patient is capable of doing, either one-on-one or in a group or a class of patients. So again, this is not just the quality of life in terms of energy and satisfaction. Here you can see for fatigue, which is a major problem with anti-cancer treatment, you can see that there is a change in cytokines, in IL-6, in tumor necrosis factor alpha, in IL-beta, etc. So compared to a control group, patients who do practice yoga, and they practice it not here and then, but practice it continuously along with their anti-cancer care, they benefit twice. Both, once they have more energy, less fatigue, and second, remember the tumor microenvironment. And again, it's not about just the cancer cell, it's about the immune system as well. And the same things apply here for Qigong and some other forms of movement that we use often with cancer patients. there is the possibility of combining things. For example, cognitive behavioral therapy plus hypnosis. This is really about how you synergize and how it's not just additive, how you combine them both so you make each and every one of them more powerful to the patient. Reflexology and other manual therapies, shiatsu, massage, myofascial release, etc., should also be considered in cancer patients. And once again, the disclaimer and the warning here is to be really careful with patients with bone metastasis. So as a rule of thumb, we try not to use high energy, high velocity manual therapies. So we won't use any chiropractic manipulation in patients with bone metastasis, but we'll do some gentle touch. And the idea of touch is really one that is not only pleasant to the patient. Many patients are deprived from touch because of issues of intimacy, or because they're afraid, or because, well, that touch is really important. And there is no evidence whatsoever that it spreads cancer all over. So the body is much smarter than just touching it, spreads the tumor. No, that's not the way. And touch is really important for patients. So many years back, about 20 years or so back, when I practiced in integrative medicine and I did my fellowship in the US, I was struck by the fact that the idea behind using alternative medicine was because the patient is anxious and neuroticism and other things like that. Well, I again want to say how important it is to bridge the gap, not to be judgmental, not to say, well, we know and you need, or you should, or please try to avoid those exclamation marks and exclamation points, and instead of them have a dialogue with your patients. Sometimes you would be surprised. Patients will come to you and say, well, how about using these herbs? And is this something you have never heard about? And you would say, no, I don't think so. Well, there is evidence. For example, astragalus. It's a Chinese herb that has tons of lab research behind it that shows it's an immune modulator, that shows how it really makes the immune system works more nicely, so to speak. Well, there is evidence also that in patients who are receiving platinum-based chemotherapy for non-small cell lung cancer, it's not just supporting the quality of life, it also extends longevity. So be open to the possibility that there are some other options here. Calendula, for example, it's an herb that has been tested in a randomized controlled trial for for irradiation for the skin problems following irradiation, for example, in breast cancer, etc. So yes, there are things that can be used, and things that can be used, I would say, in a multi-component fashion. So if thus far what we have presented is just the components, and you can use that or try that or consider that, really the art of medicine is how to put it all together. And that's the reason why I want to show you briefly how we at the Davidoff do it. So a patient may have an initial contact in our department, either by a medical referral or self-referral, and they would touch base with the secretaries, and the secretaries will be the first one to do the preliminary interview or to match the expectations. We emphasize that we do not practice alternative medicine or alternative oncology. We do the integrative one. So some patients may quit and choose not to see us, but most patients will choose to see us. And they will come for any number of things, but I would say that they would come typically for one of three main reasons, one or more of three main reasons. Some of them may come and say, I have disease, this and that, what you can do for me. Some of them may say, I have symptom, this and that, what you can do for me. And some others would say, I'm interested in nutritional consult or interested in acupuncture or etc. They would then schedule an appointment and they will see both a nurse and an MD. And it's really important that they will see both because they will have different emphasis. But at the end of the day, we have three goals for that appointment. One is to know the patient from the disease perspective, not just cancer, hypertension, diabetes, surgeries before, experiences before with the medical community, what drugs does the patient takes, what habits does the patient have, etc. Then we would like to know the person, the human being, the belief system, the values, the do's and the do nots, the preferences, etc. And please be reminded again that patients make decisions, not evidence. And third, to understand the needs of the patients and to tailor a treatment plan accordingly. Then we decide where should the patient be treated, if at all. So the initial treatments can be done in our place, in our department, or by a community referrals, but often we coordinate that with the oncology team. We'll pick up the phone or we'll send an email or call the physician who is in charge or the nurse who is in charge and say, hey, I've came across Mr. Smith or Mrs. Jones, and they presented to us with this and that idea or problem or need, we think to do this and that, how does it feel to you? And so that communication, I cannot stress it enough. The communication with the medical team, staff meetings that we hold weekly, and the idea of a case manager or coordinator, really important, so that like an orchestra, you have a conductor. In our department, we have Chinese medicine that includes acupuncture, Chinese herbs, naturopathy that deals with nutrition, vitamins and herbs, mind-body techniques such as health psychology, meditation, guided imagery, hypnosis, manual therapies, shiatsu, reflexology, massage, myofascial, movement therapy such as yoga, tai chi, qigong, pilates, Feldenkrais, and we do workshops for healthy lifestyle, for nutrition and mind-body. So the reason why I focused on that kind of slide is because I want to give you the impression that these are not just people who come and say, well, let's show you our best magic. We operate like any other medical team within a disease management team framework or tumor board framework, and the coordination is really important, the back and the forth. So I've been a physician for almost 30 years. I also hold a PhD in psychology beyond just the MD in medicine, and I'm an internist. I'm board certified in internal medicine. And just briefly, if I reflect on the 30 years of practice, it used to be about the disease, but not anymore. We moved from just the disease to the comparative effectiveness research about the treatments and the patient-centered care about the person. And as I said, from whole systems, from reductionism to complex or complexity. But as you very well know and are aware, we now try to practice within the framework of the 4P, the preventive, personalized, predictive, and participatory medicine, which is really about not looking at patients as homogeneous, the very same way EBM does, in disease, but to look at heterogeneity. What can we do different with the patient? And that evolution is like the revolution in science. Those of you who have not read yet Thomas Kuhn's masterpiece, The Structure of Scientific Revolution, really should do that sooner rather than later. It's a must read. And the reason why I want to conclude my talk with you about that is because I want to inspire you to think about what is so unique in your specific patients that you can do more. And integrative medicine tries to help with that. If you do have any further questions, or if you would like to consult with me, so you can find me up, Google me up, Ofer Caspi, MD, PhD. I'm located now at Rabin Medical Center, and I would love to help you, and I wish you well in your career in medicine. Thank you so very much. Bye-bye.